Our goal in today's video is to use this premium feature here at Kenhub that we call study units. This is a giant lesson that is devoted to learning the bones of the lower extremity. Well, we're going to use it to learn, well, the bones of the lower extremity. Now, I also, though, want you to know that we're going to leave a link down the description below to a free article. This is a 100% free article on the femur that I strongly encourage you to check out because it is also going to be amazing. But we're going to come up to this image here, and the first bone we are going to be learning about is called the os coxa, which literally translates to hip bone. Now, a lot of times people, though, are wondering, well, what about this one? Like, is the sacrum not part of the lower limb? And the answer is no. The sacrum is part of the axial skeleton. The axial skeleton includes like your rib cage and then the rest of your vertebral column all the way up to your head. The actual lower limb starts just after it. You see this joint here? This is called the sacroiliac joint or the SI joint. And this is something that people experience a lot of dysfunction in as they age. That's because the sacrum itself is like a wedge-shaped bone. So gravity just literally like pushes the os coxae apart over decades of just, again, gravity flowing through it. But regardless, the actual lower limb starts here with the os coxa or your hip bone. Now, here's the thing. It is actually three bones that have fused together. So if we look at it from this view, this is a lateral view. And as we're looking at it this way, it's like a lateral posterior view. We can see the very first of those bones called the ilium. Now, what I want to draw your attention to is this here. This socket is what's called the acetabulum. The acetabulum is where the femur is going to plug into. Well, what we're going to notice is that the acetabulum is basically where you want to keep your eyes to see that this is where those three different bones fuse together to help create the os coxa. So again, this whole upper portion is going to be the ilium. And this is where, you may hear bony landmarks like the iliac crest or the anterior superior iliac spine, right? That is just trying to show you that we are indeed on the ilium portion of the os coxa. But then we also have an ischium. So the ischium, again, if we look at that acetabulum, you can see that we're kind of like, it's basically divided into thirds. You can see that we're kind of coming across this way. And this is where you'll see things like the ischial tuberosity or the ischial ramus or the ischial spine. So this is all going to be on the posterior side of your os coxa. And then we have what's called the pubis or the pubic bone. And, this is one that I think a lot of people are familiar with just because we can feel the pubic bone just on the front and just above the genital region. But as you can see, once again, it's gone ahead and actually divided that acetabulum into thirds. This is where we'd see like the pubic symphysis, which is where both of the os coxae come together to form an actual joint. So this whole thing, though, you've just put together and we call that the os coxa or your hip bone. Now from there, we get the largest bone in the body. And again, this is going to be that link that you'll find down the description below is an article devoted purely to this bone. This thing is huge. This is the femur. So the femur, now this is kind of surprising looking at it. It actually comes at an angle. See this, like a lot of times, like especially if you're looking, I'm recording this for around Halloween time here in the United States. And so for me, it's like I'm seeing a lot of skeletons all over the place. And I'm always seeing them just kind of dangling, their femurs going straight up and down. And I'm just like, no, they come at an angle like this. But it doesn't really matter. I'm just kind of ranting needlessly. But this bone is massive. It plugs into that os coxa to form the hip joint, the acetabulofemoral joint. But this thing has so many muscles around it. The hamstrings, the quadriceps. It's just an absolutely massive muscle and it comes down. This is the bone, massive bone. This is the bone of your thigh. Then from there, we meet the patella. So the patella is what's called a sesamoid bone. A sesamoid bone is a bone that develops inside of a tendon. So what we're not able to see here are the quadriceps. So the quadriceps femoris is a muscle where its tendon will come down and then insert here on the next bone I think we're going to be looking at called the tibia. But what happens is early in our development in utero, this bone develops inside of the quadriceps tendon. And so we call it a sesamoid bone. And it's there to aid and leverage, to also not get pinched by the knee when it's extending. Really, really cool how that works. This is the patella or your kneecap. And then sure enough, yes, the tibia is the next bone. Now, the way I've always kind of remembered that this is the tibia is that it kind of looks like a T in my mind. Stick with me on this. I think you might be able to see it. Like, you got like this upper portion, and then it kind of comes at an angle. See that angle? It kind of looks like a T. Do you see what I'm seeing? Do you see what I'm seeing? That's how I make sense of it in my head, and I have forever. But this is the more massive bone of what is now called the crus. So remember, the femur was the bone of the thigh, and then the patella was also in the thigh as well. But now we're in the crus. The crus is homologous to your antebrachium. So like you can think of like the thigh being homologous to your brachium up here. This is going to be homologous or similar to the actual antebrachium or your forearm. And so we have a more massive bone and then a more thin bone. And the massive one is the tibia. This is where, again, like the quadriceps are going to be inserting, and there's a lot of other muscles that are going to be in this area. So this is the tibia. This is also the more medial of the bones. So medial, and then we have the lateral one. In fact, this is the fibula. And the way I've always taught this to my students is I say fibula lateral. I don't know. I hope that helps you. It helps my students every once in a while. Other ones just look at me like, I don't know if that was necessary, but it makes sense in my head, right? So this is the lateral bone of the crus. It's much thinner. You can see that it plugs in at the top of the tibia here, and then it comes down. And the thing to understand is the fibula as well as the tibia have these little projections on the sides of them called the malleoli. Malleolus translates to hammer. And I like to call these the ankle nubbies. If you go down and feel around your ankle, you're going to feel these two projections on either side. The one on the lateral side is the lateral malleolus, which belongs to the fibula. And then the one on the medial side is the medial malleolus, which belongs to the tibia. But again, both of these bones belong in the actual crus. From there, we move to the pes. So the pes, that is the name for the foot. But most people don't say pes. Most people just say foot. And so we're going to see that there are 7 tarsal bones, and then there are going to be a lot more of the rest of these bones. But we can collectively call all of this the foot. So again, we're going to divide it into regions. So if you look here, you're going to see there are multiple bones all right here. These are the tarsal bones. Now, we can also just say it's a region called the tarsus. So it's think of it like your wrist. In your wrist, there are 8 little bones in there that we call the carpus or the carpal bones. This is the tarsus or the tarsal bones, which is basically your ankle bones. And the first one we see here is the calcaneus. This is Greek for heel, and this is indeed your heel bone. This is a very massive, massive bone. And then just above it, we have what's called the talus. Now the talus is what helps form the ankle joint along with the fibula and the tibia. So in fact, the proper name that is of your ankle joint is the talocrural joint, which is a mouthful to say. It's the crural. You should try saying it at home. You're going to feel ridiculous along with me. But this is your ankle joint, and this is where you're going to be able to stand on the tips of your toes, or bring your toes towards your nose in what we call plantar and dorsal flexion. But this rests just above the calcaneus, and then we come over here, and this is where we see the navicular bone. So the navicular it's named this way because if you could pull this thing out, it does look like a tiny little boat. Right? You think navicular, navy, that just means boat shaped. And so this is going to be more on that medial side of the foot. And then we get the cuboid. Now, it's called the cuboid because it does have a cubish appearance, but I've never quite really bought that. It does not look nearly cube-like enough to me, but I didn't get to name it. I didn't get there first. I often sometimes fantasize and daydream about going back in time and just renaming anatomical structures. Easily the worst possible use of a time machine there is, but I still think about it quite frequently. Regardless, this is the cuboid. So the cuboid is going to be the more lateral of so you have the navicular on the medial side, and then you have the cuboid on that lateral side. And then we get what are called the cuneiforms. So the cuneiforms, there's 3 of them, and they are named after an ancient alphabet. If my understanding of this is correct, this is the most ancient alphabet or written language for the human species. If that isn't correct, go ahead and correct this down in the comments below. But that, to my understanding, that is true. So basically, someone looked at this and was like, hey, these look like the cuneiform language. It's like this box rectangle-shaped language. But since there are 3 of them and they look pretty similar, we just name them based on where they are. So for example, this right here, which you can see is right, it's on the same side as the big toe, and the big toe is the medial bone. We call this the medial cuneiform. And then we can get the intermediate cuneiform here. You can see that because it's sandwiched between the other two. And then we have the lateral cuneiform. All right, so they're pretty straightforward naming scheme here. But people oftentimes just loop them all together and say the cuneiforms. But that now encompasses all of the tarsal bones. So that is going to be all 7 tarsal bones. But from there, we then go to the metatarsals. So the metatarsal, so meta in this context is going to mean beyond. So what we're saying here is if this is the tarsus, this region here would be the metatarsus. And these bones are the metatarsal bones. Now these bones do not move. The movement is going to be very, very minimal that would be happening here between the joint, between them and the tarsal bones. The real movement starts just after these metatarsals. These are homologous to the metacarpals in your hand, which are the long bones that are deep to your palm. So in the same way that your palm doesn't really flex and move, it kind of seems like my hand is creasing there, but that's this joint here. If you look more on the dorsal side of your hand, you can see there's a whole portion here that just doesn't fold. That is the metacarpals. Well, the foot is very similar. You instead have the metatarsals. But then that is going to lead into the last of our bones, which are going to be the phalanges or the phalanxes or the digits. I am personally fond of saying digits. It's how I was taught. It's how I teach my students. But there is absolutely nothing wrong with saying phalanges or phalanxes or anything along those lines. Or you can just say toes, because that's exactly what these are. These are your toes. Now, we do number the toes 1 through 5, just like we do in the hand. So your big toe would be digit 1, then it goes digit 2, 3, 4, and then the pinky toe would be digit 5. Now, the thing to understand here is there are actually numerous bones in the digits or the phalanges. So we call each of these individual bones, you could call each individual one a phalange, you could say a phalanx. So you have 2 bones in your big toe, but then you have 3 individual bones in the other 4. So if we do that math, you actually end up with 14 bones alone in just your digits. Now that's the same for your hand, right? There's 14 bones here. Then there's going to be 5, same for the foot, right? So that now gives us 19. I can do math, I promise. So 14 plus 5 is 19. And then we have 7, that is going to be 26 bones in just the foot alone. But you do have an extra bone, by the way, up in the carpal region. You have 8 here where you only have 7, so there's actually 27 bones up in the hand. So there you go. There's a little bit of quiz, there's some trivia that you can say at your next cocktail party, because I'm sure that's what everybody's doing when they're at cocktail parties, is quizzing the other participants on foot and bone anatomy. But again, this is a premium feature. This is a study unit. These things are loaded with value. We basically construct these things to be able to teach you from the very beginning everything you need to know. We put everything we have in here. Videos, this video here is 18 minutes long. We have quizzes that are designed to either teach you as you go along, or just actually be simulated closely to an exam. We have our atlas images. We have a bunch of it here. We even have an end of study unit exam that we put in all of these. And then we always put all the related articles right next to it. I'm telling you, our study units are built to teach you everything you need to know about that area. So again, that is a premium feature, but we've gone ahead and put in the link down in the description below to our 100% free Kenhub article here on the femur. So be sure to check that out. And while you're down there, if you could go ahead and like this video, you could leave us a comment. Those things go a long way, but thanks for hanging out with me, and I will see you next time.